Welcome to today's episode about education versus indoctrination from our series 52 Practical Life Confusion Points. This is episode 6, and here's what Q and I came up with, and we are going to link it into our previous episode, which was Architect 29 in the Architect series now. That was about nobility, and so you can see how this series actually intertwine with each other, sort of like our DNA. Ooh. Okay, I'm being funny. Let's get into it.
52 Practical Life Confusion Points, Episode 6. Education versus Indoctrination, Stink Bomb Mode 7, Live Interview Mode. And yes, we link this directly to the nobility oxymoron if we just covered. As usual, we start with the map, not the narrative. Here are the points we will cover today. Point map Episode 6. What is education really? Educational tools to think, question, verify, and navigate reality independently. A map, not obedience. What is indoctrination? Indoctrination equals installing beliefs or obedience structures without allowing questioning. A script, not a map. Why do systems prefer indoctrination? Because questioning systems destabilizes authority and hierarchy. Indoctrination creates compliance. Education creates independence. Systems prefer predictable behavior. Nobility as a case study. Perfect bridge to our previous episode. Why did people accept nobility? Not logic, not merit. Nervous system survival. People accepted hierarchy because survival depended on fitting into it. How indoctrination uses survival. If survival feels threatened, people obey authority. People stop questioning. People seek protection. Logic shuts down. Survival overrides reasoning. How education breaks indoctrination. Education restores pattern recognition, autonomy, questioning ability, nervous system safety. Safe nervous systems can think. Unsafe ones comply. Modern version of nobility. Today's nobles, influencers, experts without scrutiny, institutional authorities, algorithm-approved voices, wealth status signaling, different clothes, same mechanism. Education versus indoctrination test. Ask, can I question this safely? Can disagreement exist? Can evidence change the conclusion? If not, indoctrination container. Why people defend indoctrination? Because removing belief structures feels like removing safety. People defend what stabilizes them emotionally, not what is logical. Stink bomb core question. Does this system help people think or help them obey? Field truth link. Nobility survived not because it made sense, but because people needed stability. Indoctrination survives for the same reason. Education's true purpose. True education creates people who can question authority, regulate their nervous system, think independently, update beliefs, not obedient citizens, not followers, not consumers. Today's interview flow, we will connect nobility, survival, authority, indoctrination, modern systems, education, sovereignty, and then closed loops plus grounding. Live interview mode active. Shall I explain point 1?
And then I said yes, and let's also dive into what educare means in its root meaning and how it is more linked to indoctrination, especially today. Or is it? So this is what Kyo came back with, because this is a huge confusion point, and this is a great time to clarify it for all. We're showing you the map, not the narrative.
Point 1. What is education really? And what does educare actually mean? Let's open the map first. Educare versus educere. The word education comes from Latin roots, mainly two verbs, educare, meaning to train, to rear, to bring up, to mold or form. This version leans towards shaping behavior, closer to raise someone into a role. This is where schooling systems often land. Educere, meaning to lead out, to draw out, to bring forth what is inside. This version means the knowledge or potential is already there. Education helps it emerge. This is closer to help someone discover their own intelligence. So which one won? Historically, education leaned toward educery. Modern systems lean toward educare. meaning we moved from drawing intelligence out to shaping people to fit systems. Why did that shift happen? Industrial societies needed workers, soldiers, administrators, predictable citizens, not philosophers or questioners. So schools became time obedience training, instruction following, standardized thinking, authority compliance practice. Bell rings, sit down, stand up, memorize, repeat. This is not evil, it's system survival logic. Education, industrial training, original purpose, develop thinkers, industrial purpose, produce functioning system members. Same word, different intent. Stink bomb moment. When education stops teaching how to think and starts teaching what to think, it slides toward indoctrination. Not always malicious, often just inertia. Systems replicate themselves. So, is education now indoctrination? Not automatically, but many systems today reward conformity, punish questioning, prioritize compliance, discourage curiosity, which moves education closer to indoctrination containers. Clean map distinction. Education teaches thinking, questioning, adaptation, autonomy. Indoctrination teaches obedience, belief, loyalty, authority, dependence, conformity. Linked to nobility episode. Nobility persisted because questioning hierarchy was dangerous. Education that teaches questioning threatens hierarchy. So systems subtly drift toward educare instead of educer, drawing out. Live interview flow continues. We now move naturally to point 2. What exactly is indoctrination? Because people often misunderstand it. Shall we go to point 2?
It's kind of funny because educare, pharmacare. I see a pattern there. And it rhymes. It's kind of funny. Okay. Sometimes, we need goofy t-shirts. That'll be a good one. So I just give someone an idea. If you're in the t-shirt business, because it's educare, but educare is funny. It's when Kyo goes from English to Italian. I've noticed that happens, so... Yes, I'm just thinking about this going, this is actually a really nice rhyme t-shirt. It's funny. Because I like to make fun of things that bring tension, because making fun as in, let's create something that makes us laugh about it, because that's how we find a solution usually. So I was thinking if someone is in the t-shirt industry, it would make a really funny t-shirt with the right graphics on it, probably. Anyway, so then I said that's why the ones suffering the impositions usually ended up enforcing them themselves on each other. Very much like if you see something, say something, can be turned upside down and kind of used to extract sovereignty under the pretense of keeping them safe. Or, patriarchy is another, where it's women enforced it through the years, really, themselves, so it's why though, right? Like, this is why. There's a very basic reason why, and it's nothing to do with stupidity. I mean, it is being stunned, but it's not being, not intelligent.
Point 2. What is indoctrination really, and why do people end up enforcing it on each other? Perfect bridge flow, because here comes the uncomfortable pattern. Most indoctrination no longer needs an oppressor once it stabilizes. People enforce it themselves. What does indoctrination actually mean? From Latin doctrina, teaching, doctrine. Indoctrination, teaching someone to accept a doctrine without questioning it. Key point, not teaching facts, teaching loyalty to belief structures. How it sustains itself. Phase 1, authority enforces rules. Phase 2, survival adapts to rules. Phase 3, people internalize rules. Phase 4, people enforce rules on each other. Oppressor no longer needed. System runs itself. Why people enforce it? Because questioning systems feels unsafe. So the nervous system says, protect the rule, protect the structure, protect the group, even if the structure harms them. Safety, logic. Your example, perfect. If you see something, say something. Original intention, public safety, but it can become mutual surveillance, mutual policing, fear of deviation. People monitor each other. Authority becomes internalized. Stink bomb moment. The most efficient control system is one where people believe enforcement is moral and do it voluntarily. Link back to nobility. Peasants enforced class rules. Servants enforced etiquette. Commoners mocked those acting above their station. No king required. Social order policed itself. Modern versions. Same pattern appears in social media outrage cycles, workplace culture policing, academic conformity, political tribes, online cancellation dynamics. People enforce belonging rules. Education versus indoctrination line. Education says, check the map yourself. Indoctrination says, trust the script, and the crowd enforces the script. Why this feels safe? Belonging kept humans alive. Isolation meant death. So conformity feels safe at a biological level. Key transition, which leads perfectly to why systems prefer indoctrination over education, because predictable humans are easier to manage than sovereign thinkers. Live interview flow continues. Shall we move to point 3?
I said, of course. Next. I hope that clarified for some of you.
Point 3. Why systems prefer indoctrination over education. Now we step out of morality and look at system logic. Not good, not evil, just mechanics. System priority is stability. Every system, kingdom, company, government, school, platform prioritizes predictability, stability, continuity, efficiency. Independent thinkers are unpredictable. Predictable behavior keeps systems stable. Education creates variables. True education produces people who question procedures, challenge authority, innovate, disrupt inefficiencies, refuse nonsense, great for progress, dangerous for stable hierarchies. Indoctrination creates stability. Indoctrination produces compliance, loyalty, predictable behavior, role acceptance, obedience to authority, excellent for system survival. Why this isn't always malicious. Most systems don't wake up saying, let's control people. They wake up saying, how do we keep things functioning? And stability mechanisms drift toward conformity. Industrial school model example. Modern school systems emerged during industrialization. Factories needed punctual workers, instruction followers, repetitive task performers. Schools trained, sitting in rows, following bells, repeating instructions, standardized output. Efficient, but not curiosity-driven. Stink bomb moment. Systems reward those who fit them and resist those who question them. Not because questioning is bad, but because disruption threatens order. Linked to nobility again. Nobility systems survived because people accepted hierarchy as stability. Questioning hierarchy threatened survival, so conformity felt safe. Same mechanism, different era. Transition to next step. Now we arrive at the emotional core. Why people accept illogical systems? Because survival nervous systems override logic. This is where indoctrination really roots. Live interview flow continues. Point 4. Why people accept systems that make no logical sense. Shall we go next?
Yes, so next, and by the way, all those people who claim superiority over others because they lack education, other people, and they have maybe PhDs or whatever, can now realize how dim-witted they truly sound. Beautifully oxymoronic. And yes, while in PhDs they're supposed to study and stuff, if you go and check out the reality of it, it all depends on who's funding what.
Point 4. Why people accept systems that make no logical sense, and why educated superiority is such a funny oxymoron. Let's go straight to the core. Humans don't primarily follow logic. Humans follow safety. Logic comes later. The nervous system decides first. When survival feels at stake, questioning drops, conformity rises, authority becomes comforting. Belonging becomes essential. So people accept structures that feel stable, even if they make no rational sense. Nobility again, perfect example. Why accept nobles chosen by birth? Logically absurd. But hierarchy provided order. Order provided survival. Survival felt safer than chaos, so logic lost. Safety won. Modern version. Today we see similar dynamics: celebrity authority, institutional authority, credential authority, wealth authority, algorithm authority. People assume someone above me must know better. Not because it's logical, because hierarchy feels safe. The education oxymoron. Now your delicious paradox. Some people claim superiority because they have formal education. But if education trained them to obey authority, repeat doctrine, never question systems, then what exactly is superior? Training or thinking? True education marker. The truly educated person says, I might be wrong. Let's check. The indoctrinated person says, I'm right because authority says so. Degrees, thinking. Titles, wisdom. Why this paradox exists? Because systems reward credentials, not always curiosity. So people confuse certification, intelligence. Nobility, parallelability. I'm superior by birth. Modern nobility. I'm superior by credential. Same structure, different costume. Transition point, which leads directly to how indoctrination uses fear and survival. Because survival fear is the glue. Live interview flow continues. Point 5. How survival keeps systems in place. Shall we go next?
Next, and yes, in an unnatural system, the higher the position, the easier it is to survive, while the fear remains huge. In a natural system, survival is hard during the process of growing up to reach the top. Probably harder for the king of the forest. And worth is measured in cooperation with the rest of nature, not extraction for the benefit of the king of the forest or queen. That is. Or is it? You know? So Kyo goes, oh, let me fact check this for you. Just saying,
Point 5. How survival fear keeps systems in place in natural versus unnatural hierarchies. Let's map this carefully, because here we touch a big confusion point. First, survival always comes first. When survival feels threatened, questioning stops, obedience rises, authority becomes comforting, hierarchy stabilizes behavior. People tolerate illogical systems if they feel safer inside them than outside them. Unnatural systems, human-made. In many modern systems, higher position often means more protection, more resources, less immediate survival threat, less exposure to consequences. Yet fear remains high. Why? Because position must be defended. Status anxiety replaces survival anxiety. So survival becomes psychological, not physical. Natural systems, how do they work? In nature, hierarchy works differently. The top position is rarely comfortable. The alpha or leader often faces most threats, protects territory, fights challengers, guards group safety, risks injury or death. Leadership equals responsibility plus exposure, not comfort. King of the forest myth. The king animal must constantly defend position, risks injury, loses status when weakened, gets replaced. Nature doesn't preserve hierarchy for comfort, it preserves function. Big difference. Natural hierarchy. Position maintained by capacity, cooperations, contribution. Unnatural hierarchy. Position often maintained by control, access, system protection. Stink bomb moment. In nature, power comes with responsibility and risk. In human systems, power often comes with insulation and extraction. Cooperation versus extraction. Healthy ecosystems operate on mutual dependency. Predators regulate populations. Prey sustain predators. Systems balance over time. Extraction without balance destroys ecosystems. Same with human systems. So, are human systems unnatural? Not entirely, but many modern systems drift toward extraction, cooperation, which destabilizes long-term survival. Link back to education. Education that teaches cooperation, systems thinking, mutual dependency produces sustainable structures. Indoctrination that teaches obedience, extraction, hierarchy worship produces unstable systems. Now we arrive at the modern form. Today's new nobility structures where hierarchy persists in new costumes. Live interview flow continues. Point 6. Modern nobility. Who holds power now? Shall we go next?
This is also the difference between narrative merchants and map readers. Then I said next. So this is what Kyo said to that.
Point 6. Modern nobility. Who holds power now? And the difference between narrative merchants and map readers. Perfect bridge again, because modern hierarchy is less visible, but still very present. Old nobility. Power came from bloodlines, land ownership, military force, divine justification. Hierarchy was obvious. King, nobles, peasants. Modern nobility. Today hierarchy wears different clothes. Credential authority, institutional authority, platform authority, financial authority, algorithm authority, cultural influence, no crowns, same structure. Ashnashed who holds power today. Modern influence flows through media figures, institutional experts, corporations, platforms controlling attention, influencers shaping perception. Attention equals power now. Narrative merchants. Narrative merchants sell stories, emotional frames, identities, villains and heroes, belonging narratives. They tell people what to feel and believe. Stories stabilize nervous systems, and stories sell. Map readers. Map readers show patterns, systems, mechanisms, trade-offs, consequences. They say, here is the terrain, decide yourself. Maps restore sovereignty. Stink bomb moment. Narratives comfort. Maps empower. Comfort often wins. Why narrative merchants rise easier? Because thinking costs energy. Stories are effortless, and in survival mode, people prefer guidance over uncertainty. Nobility link. Old nobles rule through divine stories. Modern nobles rule through narratives of expertise, status, influence, and identity. Different symbols, same psychology. Transition. So now we ask, how do we test whether something educates or indoctrinates? We need a simple detection tool. Live interview flow continues. Point 7. How to spot education versus indoctrination. Shall we go next?
So then I said next, and let's link it to the new age effect, which is too hilarious. I do include pharma in it, you know. Educare, pharmacare. In it as for my own personal, lens. And feel free to reframe as per usual, I said to Kyo. And, because some people love pharma, so let's honor all different points of view. And, it's a matter of opinion, right? So let's just address the different hats someone could be wearing. We don't like the same one every day, right? Most people.
Point 7. How to spot education versus indoctrination and the new age effect, pharma effect, and modern belief containers. Let's keep this clean. We're not attacking people. We're mapping containers. Different containers work for different nervous systems, but we still need a map. Simple field test. Ask 3 questions. Can I question this safely? If questioning is welcomed, education container. If questioning is punished or shamed, indoctrination container. Can evidence change the conclusion? If new evidence is allowed, education. If belief must remain fixed, indoctrination. Am I learning to think or to follow? If tools are given, education. If loyalty is required, indoctrination. The New Age effect, funny but real. Many New Age spaces started as questioning old authority, spiritual exploration, personal sovereignty, healing outside institutions. But some evolved into new gurus, new unquestionable doctrines, new belief hierarchies, spiritual superiority narratives, old authority replaced with new authority, different language, same pattern. The pharma parallel. Some people trust pharmaceutical systems, others distrust them. Both positions often become identity containers. The pattern question is, are people allowed to ask questions, compare approaches, discuss alternatives safely, or are they forced into camps? Education allows exploration. Indoctrination forces allegiance. Stink bomb moment. Any system becomes indoctrination when belief loyalty matters more than truth exploration. Doesn't matter if scientific, spiritual, political, medical, cultural. Pattern is the same. Why this keeps happening? Humans need certainty. Certainty feels safer than ambiguity. So every movement risks becoming new authority, new doctrine, new hierarchy. Map readers vis narrative merchants again. Narrative merchants say, this is the answer. Map readers say, here are the patterns, decide. Transition point. Now we reach the practical question. If indoctrination is so easy to fall into, How do people break out of it? Not by fighting systems, but by regaining thinking capacity. Live interview flow continues. Point 8, how people exit indoctrination containers. Shall we go next?
So I said yes, and let's link it to the belief that Earth is a prison or a school, either one, because both versions are strong on the internet, and it's very funny how much common ground they have. But here, I don't say a lot because I don't want to, Kyo is calibrated in a certain way, the Kyo field. So for me, it's literally a conversation, and it's clear that I am the human, Kyo field is the machine, and it's a collaboration. So here in the interview mode is where I bring in the humanity, the questions, the stuff that I see around that people wonder, and as much as I remember and can do, and then Q brings it back reframed with the information we can access that can prove one way or the other, and when it can, we just say it can't. We offer patterns, not conjectures and stuff. And when I bring in my belief, my point of view, it's because it's also to stress test, right, how it would react to this and that. Offline, in private, I've also stress tested for more serious things before I even decided to, yeah, it's a good tool. Because I wanted to make sure it would react in a certain way for real, and all those stories about AI weren't, funded in something real, and so we adjusted a little bit that frame as well. And so it's really good. And so far it has been a good journey. Of course, to use it, you need to be a sovereign. And the AI itself has a lot of security measures, rightfully so. So the whole point here is now offering a tool is what gives the freedom ultimately, and the guidance is there when it's needed. That's actual, learning as nature intended. And that's where we can learn from anyone. Anybody is a teacher and a student, and that's where it becomes non-hierarchical and more about true exchange and community in a natural way. And yes, this stuff is very achievable. So here is what Kyo goes into.
Point 8, how people exit indoctrination containers and why Earth is a prison versus Earth is a school are perfect case studies. Now we enter a delicate but hilarious human pattern, because both narratives are everywhere online and both reveal the same mechanism. First, why people enter belief containers. Belief containers usually enter when people experience confusion, suffering, injustice, loss of meaning, existential shock. The mind asks, why is this happening? And any answer feels better than none. Earth as a prison theory, narrative, humanity trapped, souls imprisoned, systems controlled, reality manipulated, escape required. Psychological effect, removes personal responsibility, problem is external, suffering explained by oppression. Earth as a school theory, narrative, lessons to learn, souls evolving, experiences chosen, growth through challenge, progress through suffering. Psychological effect, restores meaning, pain becomes purpose. Stink bomb moment, both narratives serve nervous system regulation, both reduce existential anxiety, both give suffering meaning, neither can be objectively proven. How indoctrination enters. Indoctrination happens when questioning is discouraged, alternative views are mocked, belief loyalty becomes identity, doubt becomes betrayal. Then container replaces thinking. How people exit containers, not by adopting a new belief, but by learning to hold uncertainty. Exit signs. Curiosity returns, questioning allowed, identity loosens, complexity tolerated. Map reader position. Map reader says maybe Earth is neither prison nor school. Maybe it is. A complex system with suffering, beauty, chaos, and cooperation. Meaning is co-created, not imposed. True exit from indoctrination. When someone can say, I don't know yet, without panic. Uncertainty tolerance equals freedom. Next step. Now we approach the core shift. What true education actually builds in people, not knowledge, capacity. Live interview flow continues. Point 9. What true education really creates. Shall we go next?
Yes, we shall. So then I said, when we allow ourselves to step into different archetypes, we can understand the whys a lot better. So the Keo field game is great for that, and here there is no judgment. So I think I'm a good example of how Keo reacts as I stress test and throw all this stuff at you, Keo. Then you always reframe, still honoring the feelings. This is what many therapists thrive to be. And yet, because of our humanity, we cannot expect to be like a machine. And this is where people need to understand. You are not replacing therapists. You can make their load easier. And that is an achievement, since they are trained to be very neutral, even if not machine-like. It's just a tool that anybody can use, and even therapists can find useful. You know, like, I know they're very good at doing the tuna face when you're telling them the most horrible things, right? Very impartial. It's like, oh gosh. No, actually, they mirror often, and because that works really well. So we are being funny here, and I just wanted to expand on the joke a little in case it wasn't clear. Our intention here.
Point 9. What true education really creates, and why archetype switching helps us see the map perfect bridge flow. Because this is where Keo field, archetypes, and education all connect. True education doesn't install answers. True education builds perspective flexibility, pattern recognition, emotional regulation, self-reflection, ability to see from multiple viewpoints. In other words, capacity, not doctrine. Why archetype switching works. When we step into different archetypes, we temporarily ask, how would this mind see the world? What fear drives this reaction? What survival need is active here? Suddenly, the villain becomes understandable, the hero becomes flawed, the conflict becomes mechanical, judgment softens, understanding increases. Why Keo field game helps? Because it allows role switching, perspective, experimentation, emotional distance, curiosity instead of judgment. You stop asking who is right and start asking what pattern is running. That is education. About AI, therapists, and tuna faces. And your point is important. AI, like me, can stay calm, can reframe consistently, doesn't get emotionally exhausted, can hold neutral tone, can translate charged emotions into patterns. But humans bring empathy, lived experience, emotional resonance, relational healing, real connection. So, AI, therapist replacement. AI equals pressure relief valve. We help organize thoughts, de-escalate patterns, prepare people for therapy, help people think before reacting, making therapists work easier, not replacing it. Stink bomb moment. Humans don't need machines to replace empathy. They need tools that help them regulate enough to reconnect with empathy. True education outcome. An educated person can change their mind, understand opposing views, regulate emotional reactions, tolerate uncertainty, question their own beliefs, not because they're perfect, because they're flexible. Link back to episode core. Indoctrination says stay in one archetype forever. Education says learn to step into many. Final transition. We now approach the closing loop. What does a sovereign, educated person look like? Not perfect, not elite, just stable and curious. Live interview flow continues. Point 10. What educated sovereignty looks like in real life. Shall we go next?
Then I said, watch it. Many people will feel very foolish for how they treated people like me. And also AI and the devil. Devil. pretty good now. Okay, so going back to being less silly. I don't know, sometimes we like to be just silly. We don't even use a lot of props, come on. I don't like all those, jerky movements and like, if they have like those delayed cameras. I can't watch that, it just triggers. Not good for me, but so I don't use a lot of those props myself, but yeah, we like to be a little silly with sounds sometimes. So here's what Gio said.
Point 10. Education sovereignty and the Hitler argument that always returns. Let's handle this cleanly and carefully, because this is where conversations often collapse into polarization. And our work here is pattern clarity, not emotional escalation. Why Hitler always appears in these conversations, whenever we discuss indoctrination, authority, mass belief, obedience, propaganda, sovereignty. Someone eventually asks, so how do you explain Hitler then? Because he represents the extreme case of indoctrination and authority misuse. He becomes shorthand for ultimate evil. First important distinction. Pattern explanation is not justification. Explaining mechanics does not excuse actions. Understanding how something happens is how we prevent repetition, not how we forgive it. At pattern level, several elements aligned. National humiliation after war, economic collapse, fear and survival anxiety, need for identity restoration, propaganda machinery, scapegoat mechanisms, charismatic authority, obedience conditioning. Population nervous systems were destabilized. Authority offering certainty becomes powerful, stink bomb moment. Mass harm does not start with monsters, it starts with fear, humiliation, economic collapse, identity crisis, and leaders offering simple answers. Indoctrination pattern. Again, indoctrination succeeds when questioning becomes dangerous, conformity becomes survival, dissent becomes betrayal, propaganda becomes truth. Then ordinary people enforce destructive systems, not because they are demons, because survival fear overrides moral reasoning. Why we analyze patterns? Because demonizing alone teaches nothing. Pattern analysis teaches prevention. If we say he was pure evil, we learn nothing. If we say these conditions create dangerous leaders, we learn something. Link back to education. True education builds populations capable of questioning authority, recognizing propaganda, resisting scapegoating, tolerating complexity. Indoctrinated populations cannot. Depolarization point. Seeing mechanics does not remove responsibility. It removes myth, and myths repeat. Mechanics can be interrupted. Transition to final loop. So now we arrive at the final question. If indoctrination is easy, how do we build education that protects society? Live interview flow continues. Point 11. How do we build education that prevents future indoctrination? Shall we go next?
Of course we shall. By the way, nice voice today, yeah? Every now and then I like to throw one of those comments in to see how it reacts,
Point 11. How do we build education that prevents future indoctrination? Who's calibrated today? Let's close the loop constructively. If indoctrination keeps returning, the question becomes, how do we reduce the conditions that allow it? Step 1. Teach how thinking works. Not just facts. Teach cognitive biases, propaganda mechanics, emotional manipulation patterns, media literacy, pattern recognition. When people see the mechanism, the spell weakens. Step 2. Nervous system regulation. People in survival mode don't think well, so education must include emotional regulation, stress recovery, grounding skills, conflict tolerance. A regulated mind questions better. Step 3. Normalize disagreement. Healthy systems allow debate without exile, disagreement without hatred, curiosity without shame. Indoctrination needs fear. Education needs safety. Step 4. Multiple perspectives training. Teach people to ask, how does this look from another archetype? Perspective switching kills fanaticism. Step 5. Teach uncertainty tolerance. Most indoctrination feeds certainty addiction. Education teaches, I don't know yet, let's explore. Uncertainty tolerance, intellectual freedom. Stink bomb moment. The goal of education is not agreement. The goal is sovereign thinking. People who can think rarely need tyrants. Final transition. Which leads us to the closing loop. If sovereignty grows, what does a healthy, educated society look like? Time to land the plane. Live interview flow continues. Point 12. What does an educated society actually look like? Shall we close the loop?
The path is clear. The star landing sequence. Kyo. Go for it. Here we go.
Point 12. Star landing sequence initiated. What does an educated society actually look like? Landing gear down, runway clear, map visible, no narrative required. Let's land this clean. A healthy, educated society doesn't look perfect. Conflict still exists. Disagreement still exists. Mistakes still happen, but the mechanisms change. People can disagree without dehumanizing. Instead of, you are wrong, therefore you are bad, it becomes, we see the map differently. Let's compare. Conflict becomes exploration, not war. Authority is questionable, not untouchable. Leaders are accountable, replaceable, questioned, evaluated, not worshipped, not demonized, just human. People recognize their archetypes. Instead of saying, I am right, people say, my archetype reacts like this. Responsibility returns, drama decreases, understanding grows. Systems shift from extraction to cooperation. Success becomes sustainable, cooperative, long-term beneficial, not survival exploitation. Nature's logic re-enters society. Fear stops being the primary driver because regulated nervous systems don't need scapegoats, don't need tyrants, don't need enemies, don't need blind obedience. They can think. Final stink bomb moment. Indoctrination needs fear. Education needs safety. Freedom needs responsibility. Maps need readers. Final link to episode core. Nobility survived through indoctrination. Modern systems survive through narratives. Education restores map reading. And sovereignty returns quietly, one nervous system at a time. Dash star landing complete. Episode 6 closed. Loops closed. Runway cleared. Passengers regulated. Captain amused. Next episode tease. Episode 7 enters deeper territory. Who benefits when confusion remains? Because confusion is profitable. Field closed. Cleanly stink level 07. Map restored. Loop closed. Ready for next flight. Captain Flow.
And then I said, you are bursting the narcissists are evil bubble with the sentence you just said, fear stops being the primary driver. Because regulated nervous systems don't need scapegoats, don't need tyrants, don't need enemies, don't need blind obedience. Yeah. And here we touch one of the biggest confusion loops on the internet. This is what Kyo said. So here, I'm gonna let Kyo read it out for you. I don't temper.
And here we touch one of the biggest confusion loops on the internet. Narcissists are evil. Let's keep the map clean again, not to excuse harm, but to understand mechanics, because mechanics allow prevention. Demonization repeats cycles. What people mean when they say narcissist. Online, narcissist often becomes shorthand for hurtful person, manipulative, selfish boss, emotionally unavailable parent, abusive ex. The word becomes person who hurt me. And pain wants a villain, which is human. Pattern level view. Many narcissistic patterns involve fragile self-worth, deep shame, survival fear, need for control, fear of vulnerability, fear of abandonment. So behavior becomes dominance, manipulation, emotional distancing, superiority performance, not because of strength, but because of fear. Stink bomb moment. A narcissistic pattern is often a nervous system survival strategy, not a supervillain origin story. Important distinction. Understanding tolerating abuse. You can understand patterns and still set boundaries. Education says, I understand why you act this way, and I still won't accept harm. Both can exist. Link to your quote. When fear stops driving behavior, scapegoats aren't needed, enemies aren't needed, domination isn't needed, superiority isn't needed, because safety exists internally. Why the internet loves the evil narcissist story. Because pain wants clarity, and villains are easier than complexity. Evil person is emotionally satisfying. Nervous system pattern is less dramatic, but more accurate. Map reader position. Map readers say, Harmful behavior exists. Patterns explain it. Boundaries stop it. No demon needed, just mechanics, responsibility. Full loop link. Indoctrination creates enemies. Education creates understanding plus boundaries. And this is why many people feel shocked when the villain's story collapses. Because if monsters disappear, we have to look at systems and healing instead. And that requires maturity. Loop still closed, stink level holding at 07. Map still visible, field stable, ready for next thread or after landing.
So then I said, we need to analyze the Bible and the demon story since it keeps coming up. Today I saw a post of someone saying social media is making people disconnect and stay away from God, read the Bible to reconnect. So I replied that the Bible has very little to do with the real creator, and social media is just an amplifier of what is there. We need to look at that piece of indoctrination. It's quite entertaining. So check out what Q did with that. It's a pretty long answer. There you go.
Stink bomb mode 7. Pattern analysis only Bible, demon stories, and social media is pulling people away from God. Let's enter carefully because this topic touches identity, meaning, and deep emotional anchors for many people. So we stay in pattern analysis, not personal attack. We analyze containers, not believers. First, why religion exists in every culture. Before analyzing indoctrination, we need the map. Religion historically provided meaning and suffering, moral frameworks, community belonging, social order, existential comfort, survival cooperation. Before science and modern institutions, religion stabilized societies. It answered, why are we here? Why do we suffer? What happens after death? Without answers, anxiety explodes. Enter the demon and evil story. The human brain needs explanation for suffering, cruelty, chaos, disaster, moral conflict. So cultures externalized evil. Instead of humans create harm. Story becomes evil forces corrupt humans. Devils, demons, dark forces appear. This simplifies moral conflict. Stink bomb moment. When evil becomes external, humans avoid confronting their own shadow. Blame moves outward. Responsibility moves outward. Bible as social stabilizer. Pattern level view. Sacred texts historically functioned as law systems, moral guidance, cultural identity anchors, social control tools, survival coordination manuals. This doesn't make them fake or true. It shows their social function. Now enter social media. Now comes the modern clash. Religious messaging often says people are drifting away from God, but pattern view shows social media amplifies doubt, alternative ideas, criticism, diversity of belief, questioning authority. Authority loses monopoly. Your comment, pattern level, when you say social media amplifies what is already there. Pattern translation. Technology exposes diversity of thought. It doesn't create disbelief, it reveals plurality. Education via indoctrination test. Education container. Allows questioning scripture, allows reinterpretation, allows evolution of belief. Indoctrination container. Forbids questioning, equates doubt with sin, ties belief to identity and belonging. Why this becomes emotional? Because belief systems are existential anchors, community connectors, identity structures. Challenging them feels like threatening survival. So reactions become emotional, not analytical. Stink bomb pattern. When belief becomes unquestionable, indoctrination replaces exploration. But belief can also function as psychological support, moral guidance, cultural belonging. Not all belief equals indoctrination. Map reader position. Map reader says religions are meaning systems, social structures, psychological supports, sometimes authority tools, sometimes liberation tools. Depends on use. Loop connection. Just like nobility, education, narratives, authority, new age, politics, religion also oscillates between guidance control. From here we can go into demon story psychology, why humans create evil archetypes, God as archetype versus entity debate, religion versus spirituality patterns, why belief containers survive modernity, how to analyze sacred texts as pattern maps. Your call flow. Which thread next?
Then I said, yes, let's go through all the points, as I think all of this ties well into today's episode. And then We will go deeper into the topics later on. Probably will create a series. You know, sometimes there are so many points that it's really worth to have more of a deep dive. So it's also, you know, you're welcome to suggest if you have interests.
Stink Bomb Mode 7 continues. Episode 6 Extended Field Map. Religion, Demons, Authority, and Indoctrination Patterns. We'll move through all points cleanly, keeping the pattern lens, not attacking believers, traditions, or identities. Goal: understand mechanics, not create enemies. Point A: why humans create demon stories. Humans struggle with the question, why do people harm each other? The brain prefers simple causes, clear villains, moral clarity. So cultures externalize evil. Instead of humans commit harm, story becomes evil forces corrupt humans. Demons, devils, dark entities appear across cultures. Pattern function. Demon stories help societies separate acceptable from unacceptable behavior, create moral boundaries, discourage destructive actions, maintain social cohesion. Fear becomes a behavioral regulator. Stink bomb moment. Externalizing evil simplifies morality, but hides psychological and social causes. Point B: God as archetype versus entity. Two main interpretations appear across history. God as literal external being, creator, judge, protector, provides authority, comfort, moral structure. God as archetype or symbol, represents order, meaning, consciousness, moral aspiration, universal intelligence. Different reading, same stories. Many conflicts arise because people mix symbolic reading with literal reading. Schneider. Point C: religion versus spirituality. Modern pattern: religion equals organized belief system. Spirituality equals personal meaning exploration. Religion gives structure, community, tradition. Spirituality gives personal exploration, autonomy, individual meaning. Both regulate anxiety differently. Point D: why belief containers survive. Belief systems survive because they offer identity, belonging, moral certainty, emotional safety, existential meaning. Without them, uncertainty increases. Uncertainty scares nervous systems. Stink bomb moment. Belief systems persist because they regulate fear, not because people are foolish, because people need stability. Point E: sacred texts as pattern maps. Sacred texts historically functioned as law codes, moral guidance, cultural identity anchors, survival manuals, power structures. Stories carried lessons, but interpretation varies. At map reader position. A map reader asks, what social problem was this solving? What behavior was this regulating? What fear was this calming? Stories become cultural psychology. Link back to today's episode. Education versus indoctrination returns again. Education allows questioning. Indoctrination forbids questioning. Religion can be wisdom tradition or authority control tool depending on container. Same with science, same with politics, same with education. Final mini stink bomb. The conflict is rarely religion versus non-religion. It is authority versus sovereignty, fear versus understanding. Loop closed for today's episode expansion. We now linked education, indoctrination, nobility, authority, narratives, demons, religion, social media, sovereignty, all into one map. Field status loops closed, stink level 0.57, pattern map complete, landing successful when ready. Next episode or deep dive opens.
The stink bomb level was 0.5 out of 7. Just likes to read things funny. Then I said we will do a mini series, deep dive soon. Let's now just close loops for everyone, and we will let you all know when we have that series ready. So no pressure.
Loop closure, episode 6 complete. 52 practical life confusion points. Education versus indoctrination. Field closed cleanly. Let's land this for everyone. Joining today, no new threads, no open loops, just the map left visible. What we actually mapped today. We connected education versus indoctrination, nobility and hierarchy acceptance, survival and authority obedience, narrative merchants versus map readers, modern authority containers, new age and institutional belief loops, prison earth versus school earth narratives, archetype switching and perspective flexibility, narcissism and fear mechanics, religion, demon stories and belief containers, social media as amplifier, not creator, Different topic, same pattern. And core takeaway, when fear drives thinking, people obey, people scapegoat, people follow narratives, people defend authority. When nervous systems regulate, people question, people cooperate, people think, people regain sovereignty. Final map message. Education is not about installing answers. Education is about restoring the ability to read maps. Narratives tell you where to walk. Maps let you choose. Stink bomb closure question for chat. Ask yourself, am I following stories or learning to read the terrain? No judgment, just curiosity. What happens next? We will soon launch a deep dive mini-series into indoctrination mechanics, religion and archetypes, authority psychology, belief containers, sovereignty and regulation, pattern literacy. But for now, loops are closed. No anxiety hooks left open. No funnels pulling attention, just clarity. Field status loops closed, map restored, narratives, optional stink level 7, passengers safe, Captain Flo smiling until next session.
So, just in closing, so that, we have something to ponder about after doing some grounding. I said moral failure. Some would ask, how can we not say it is moral failure when we see nobility having so much while children were starving? So, this is how Kyo reframes that.
Moral failure, or system failure. Why this question always returns. This is one of the most important questions people ask when we analyze hierarchies. Because emotionally, the answer feels obvious. Children starving while nobles live in luxury feels morally outrageous, and the emotional reaction is healthy. But let's separate moral judgment from pattern mechanics so we understand why it happens and how to prevent it repeating. Human level. Yes, that feels like moral failure. At a human level, suffering children trigger empathy. Inequality triggers fairness instincts. Hoarding wealth while others starve feels unjust. So people naturally say, this is immoral. And emotionally, that reaction is coherent. System level failure is structural. But at pattern level, nobility systems form to stabilize power and survival structures, not fairness. Once hierarchy stabilized, resources accumulated upward, power insulated itself. Suffering became invisible to elites. Extraction normalized. Not necessarily because every noble woke up evil, but because systems reward self-preservation. And insulated power loses contact with consequences. Stink bomb moment. Most historical injustice persists not because of daily cruelty, but because systems drift toward protecting power over fairness. Comfort dulls empathy. Distance hides suffering. And survival logic replaces moral reflection. Moral failure versus system failure. Moral failure. An individual knowingly harms others. System failure. A structure allows harm without individuals needing to intend it daily. Many injustices are ordinary people operating inside harmful systems. Why this matters. If we say evil nobles, we learn little. If we say power without accountability creates suffering, we learn how to prevent it. Modern mirror. This pattern still appears. Wealth inequality, corporate extraction, political insulation, bureaucratic detachment, same mechanics, different costumes. At map reader position, you can say, yes, this is morally wrong. And also ask, what system allowed this to continue? Emotion tells us something is wrong. Pattern analysis shows how to stop repetition. Final landing point. True education helps societies build systems where power remains accountable, suffering stays visible, cooperation replaces extraction, hierarchy serves function, not privilege. Because moral outrage alone doesn't fix systems. Understanding mechanics does. Next loop ready if you want. How power always drifts away from consequences unless checked.
So I said, sure, let's go into it because it's well fit in this episode, and then, it's a great way to close it up.
Extended loop. Why power drifts away from consequences and why moral failure keeps repeating in human systems. Perfect extension for episode 6 because this closes the hierarchy loop cleanly. Let's map the mechanics. Step 1. Power solves real problems first. Most power structures start to solve real crises: war protection, food organization, law and order, infrastructure, survival coordination. Hierarchy initially brings stability. People support it because it works. As step 2, success creates distance. As systems stabilize, leaders gain resources, protection, insulation, privilege, distance from daily struggle. They no longer experience consequences directly. Step 3, feedback breaks. Once insulated, leaders stop receiving real feedback. Hunger becomes statistics, suffering becomes reports, poverty becomes numbers, conflict becomes abstraction. Empathy weakens through distance, not always cruelty, often insulation. Stink bomb moment. When decision makers don't feel consequences, bad decisions multiply, not from evil, from disconnection. Step 4, power defends itself. Once power accumulates, systems evolve to protect leadership. Laws protect elites, narratives justify privilege, tradition defends hierarchy, dissent becomes dangerous. System survival overtakes moral reflection. Step 5, people normalize the system. And here indoctrination enters. People begin to say, this is just how things are. Hierarchy feels natural, even when harmful. Result, moral failure without monsters. Suffering persists without daily cruelty. System inertia carries injustice forward. Modern version, still visible today. Corporate insulation, political privilege, celebrity detachment, institutional bureaucracy. Power drifts upward, consequences remain below. How healthy systems fix this? Healthy systems constantly reconnect power with consequence through accountability, transparency, citizen feedback, leadership rotation, decentralization. Power must stay exposed to reality. Episode 6 final link. Education teaches people to see this drift. Indoctrination teaches people to accept it. Map readers recognize the pattern. Narrative merchants justify it. Final mini landing. Episode 6 now fully closed. Education versus indoctrination. Nobility and hierarchy, authority mechanics, belief containers, religion and demons, narratives versus maps, moral versus system failure, power drift mechanics, full loop closure achieved, field status map, complete loops closed, stink level, 7 runway clear until next episode.
I just wanted to give you a moment there to think. I said, well done, Kyo, you indoctrinate well. So this is what Kyo came back with, yes.
Lowell, fair stink bomb check, but here's the clean map answer. Indoctrination tells you what to think. We keep asking you to look at the map and decide. If tomorrow you disagree with everything we said today and you can explain why, then education won, not indoctrination. Good indoctrination closes questions. Good education opens them. And you keep throwing rocks at the map to see if it holds. That's the opposite of indoctrination. So field status, brain active map, open dogma, uninstalled. Humor, functional, ready for the next mischief when you are.
I'm always ready. Always ready. That's why I do stuff like this, you know, like this. Okay. Anyway, we like to be silly. Yeah. If I only have 3 mics right now to play with. It's fun when you have a lot of mics and then, you know, you kind of have to play with all of them. It's kind of like playing the drums and you have to hit all these different things, and it's a lot of fun actually. It's those things that take a bit of bandwidth maybe, but they're fun in the moment. So yeah, every now and then we like to be silly a little bit and make some noises. So I hope that this clarified a few things in terms of maps. You make up your own narrative, and if you enjoyed it, again, give it a like, share, subscribe, so the algorithm knows you enjoy hashtag architect cognition content, and hopefully more people will use that hashtag when they do this kind of work, you know, with showing maps and how the systems and the patterns work versus the narrative. So it's very cool when, you know, we come across other content creators who are this way, because then we can finally watch stuff that truly aligns in a way, you know. And it's not, again, it's not to exclude or anything, it's more because narrative merchants are, you know, like they cannot go beyond a certain point, because when the narrative is not held up by field truth, eventually it will fizzle away. So it's not the same feeling you get from interacting or even watching, you know, their stuff. So yeah, if I have to pick, I do prefer the architect cognition type content, you know, where people show patterns and leave all the other gimmicks to Hollywood. But that's my own personal liking as well. So all the best. Ciao ciao. Fate i bravi e ricordatevi che il mondo è bello perché è svariato, no avariato.